Joining me now for another edition of the Knicks Film School pregame show with the Knicks headed to the nation's capital. Won't say what date it is that they're going to the nation's capital for, but they're going to be playing the Washington Wizards in a matchup of two teams that are in different places in the standings that could potentially become trade partners in the not too distant future. We welcome back from Bleav In Wizards with Jihadi White, Mr. Matt Modderno. Matt, welcome back.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I hope we're trade partners in the future. I think that'd be good for both parties. So let's figure out what we can work out here.
So let's get the nonsense out the way. That's where I want to start, because I mean this as respectfully as possible. How this game goes, it's not as important to me as the potential for the Knicks to trade for Tyus Jones, since they just traded Emmanuel quickly and now currently don't have a backup point guard on the roster. So let's start here. How has Tyus Jones been for the Wizards this year? Tell Knicks fans what they could potentially be acquiring, or should they even want him? Like, give us the scouting report from your perspective.
The team loves hyping up his assist to turnover ratio, so that's good. If you like guys that are pretty ball secure, he definitely does that. He's been good offensively. I think he's created a little bit more for himself than I would have expected. I don't think he's really a guy that's going to create like a ton of easy looks for other people. Like, there's some guys that are so dynamic, they're spoon feeding people. That was like always the John Wall thing. Is like, you know, he made the Marcin Gortat kind of, you know, players by giving them all these easy buckets. I don't think Tyus necessarily does that, but he's going to get guys the ball in the right places at the right times. And I think he's been a little more self-focused on the Wizards just because I don't really blame him. You know, might as well get the stats up first time as a starter. I think somewhere like the Knicks is something he'd settle back into more of a 50-50 split between self-creation, creating for others. Shot the ball pretty well. He honestly scoring well. He's just so small. And that's really, I think, the challenging end. The Wizards don't have the personnel to make up for him defensively, putting him next to Poole. It's probably the worst defensive backcourt in the NBA, I would say. I think Tyus tried harder, honestly, from what I saw from him in Memphis. It was also in limited spurts with a reduced offensive role, so maybe that's fair. And he had more help around him. So I think based on what the Knicks would probably ask of him, he could get back to being a slightly better defender. Just at the end of the day, you're kind of limited when you're like 6 feet tall and not crazy athletic.
I think the fear I have is that he was in Memphis as a backup. He did get more time than expected. Yeah. Like he started a decent amount, not like as much as he's doing on the Wizards, but he started a bunch because Ja in 2 seasons ago was hurt and 1 season ago was unavailable.
Other stuff.
Yeah. And he's now like playing 30 minutes a game in Washington. Granted, not like you said, in part of a backcourt that let's say winning is not the expectation, but like you're getting to play more. So there is that positive. Is there any justification to my worry that if he comes to the Knicks, he's clearly the backup? There will be games he plays like 12 to 15 minutes a game potentially. There could be some dissension on his part that he's now taking a backseat again.
Yeah, I think it seems by all accounts like he's a good enough dude and team player that I don't know that you have to worry about him like wanting to come in and go rogue to put stats up. So that's probably okay. It's just one of those things where if you're going to expend, Wizards probably want like a decent haul back, not a haul, but like a decent take back for him to actually make that trade. Are you going to give up enough to bring in a guy that you can't really play next to your best player that often? That's what I'd wonder about if I were Knicks fans. Honestly, kind of, if it were me, I think I'd be more looking at like a DeLon Wright. Could you get him really cheaply? And, you know, decent enough ball handler, much better defender. The shooting, he just hasn't played a ton this year. He's been injured. He is healthy now. He doesn't give you much offensively, but if you just want somebody that can kind of like be solid enough with the ball, but you know, wreak a little havoc on D, I think he's probably like a better guy that you could get more cheaply. So if you're not willing to give up a lot for a guy that probably isn't going to play a ton of minutes for you, that might really be the dude. And I also think he's big enough to guard some twos, so you could put him next to Brunson, you know, in a closing lineup if you needed someone to shut down another team's guards.
I think I speak on behalf of Knicks fans. I know I speak on behalf of a lot of people in our audience that it's very much, we've narrowed in on Tyus Jones. So I don't know if DeLon Wright will be the guy. So let's talk price. What is I don't know if you're able to speak to what you think the Wizards would want back in a trade, but the Knicks do have control over the Wizards pick. So if that is the returning price and then like a salary in a trade, and that's the move. Like you get control over your draft back. That's not even whetting your appetite a little bit, or what's the potential price you'd want back?
I wouldn't think so. Unfortunately for Knicks fans, I don't know that pick ever conveys as a first round pick, just given where the Wizards are and the time frame they're in. I think as long as it, between now and 2026, if we're not good, it probably never turns into anything other than 2 seconds. So
real quick, the counter I would make is like, because of the nature of like trades, like you then still have to wait for the Knicks that pick to convey in order to be able to start here's multiple picks. Now, maybe the Wizards aren't in a position to be thinking about, we want to trade multiple picks for anything, but you never know if it comes to a point where it's like, oh, this person's available, but we only have X available right now because we owe the Knicks this pick that may not convey for a while,
Yeah, I think that's the one consideration. But also, if you're just the beginning of a rebuild, are you really going to go in to be trading first round picks for people anyway?
No, that's true.
I think just timing wise, it's probably not super important to them. Like if they could get that back as a throw in, I'm sure even just have the Knicks lift protections as a part of it, or do some other maneuvering like to make that a little more palatable. Sure, I just don't think that that's going to be enough to be like the central point of any kind of trade is to get that pick back. So I don't really know exactly what they'd expect back for Jones. I think there's a world where they're like not in a huge hurry to trade him if they don't think they're going to get like a meaningful return here, because they think he sets the table for all these other guys and culture and whatever other buzzwords they want to throw out. And I do think they mean that to some extent. Maybe it's a little posturing. To me, it'd be stupid to hold on to him. But I think they probably think they can get like, a late-ish first back for him just in a vacuum, not even just a pick that may or may not convey in a certain amount of time. So
what if I said it's the Dallas pick the Knicks have this year?
That's probably something that's considerably more interesting to them, I would think.
Okay.
Who knows what where that pick actually ends up, but it probably has a decent chance of being a reasonable pick. And whatever the salary is, or any young guys on the Knicks that aren't getting any burn that the Wizards could look at as a reclamation project.
Unfortunately, we traded the two young guys one that wasn't getting enough burn Emmanuel quickly. That look, there's a world where if you're into Malachi Flynn, that's the young guy that comes back. Precious Achiuwa, even we'll see what the Knicks do with either of these guys over the next month. But look, I think the bigger question I have, because you're projecting what the front office might like. Sure. The fan base, what are they going to be upset with if this is the return we got for Tyus Jones?
Yeah, I think just our pick back and some salary would be a bummer. The Wizards have so few guys, I think, that people will actually want to give anything up for, and you're starting a rebuild with very few assets. You didn't get really much for Beal. You got some pick swaps, and that's great. You got Tyus Jones is all you got for Porzingis, and I think I've tried to be the voice of reason a lot, which is not really my strong suit about the Porzingis trade. Is Tyus Jones was basically the sweetener to help facilitate Porzingis going where he wanted to go. It wasn't, necessarily Porzingis for Jones. I think that's how some people are trying to conflate that. And but if that's how people look at it, they're going to be like, oh, we only got our own pick back for basically Porzingis. It's just the mental math would be tougher for people to pull off, I think. So again, not that the front office would think that way, but I think that there'd be enough fans that would be kind of peeved.
I think the fascinating part is the difference between, and what is the disconnect between what the fans might think about it? Does the front office think similarly? Do they care what the fans think? Are they going to make the best move possible? We're still in a bit of a reactionary phase after the OG Anunoby trade, where there was a clear attachment from the fan base to both of these kids that you drafted, 1/3 overall, 125th, that became the value in an OG Anunoby trade. And it's very clear we're going to miss both of these guys, and Raptors viewership on League Pass is going to be through the roof in New York. Yeah. And yet the Knicks got better, unfortunately. Well, I don't know if unfortunately is not even the word. Bittersweet. Like they got better. Like OG Anunoby is the perfect fit for the Knicks now.
Wholeheartedly agree.
I echo one of the guys on one of our pods called Casual Friday last night, Mensa. Like this is the best starting lineup, I think, since the 90s that the Knicks have had. And so that's why I think the priority of a backup point guard is like, I don't know what the assets they're willing to give up. I know the DeJounte Murray stuff is out there. I'm still just going to trust that a CAA run team and a clutch client are able to become part of like that family's going to come together when it actually happens.
Can I ask you one thing real quick?
Oh yeah, go ahead. Sure.
Just on this whole thread for a minute. I'm curious if like Knicks fans do this too. Wizards fans, we do this amazing thing where everyone on our team sucks and we hate them, and all of our tweets are about how bad everyone on the team is. But then also we expect like a lot of things back for them in return. It's like, this guy is terrible, but give us multiple first round picks for him. Is that a thing you all do too? Or is that just us? Like, I don't know how that works.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear you say that. It's almost literally the opposite.
Oh, okay.
It's like Quentin Grimes could be Klay Thompson if he got the run.
Sure.
Deuce McBride is a rotation player in the league. My mic keeps messing up. Apologies, everybody. Deuce McBride should be getting like 20 minutes a game.
I would take Deuce back, by the way. That could.
So it's funny. The extension he just got, we all assumed it was salary for whatever trade they're going to after this summer. See, that's a fascinating trade. If it's Deuce and a Dallas pick for Tyus Jones, I don't necessarily know if the Knicks do that, but it's interesting. I will say that's interesting. Point is, like, there are people that love Deuce McBride. Like, the reason there was such an outcry when the initial trade happened here in New York, at least from what we saw, where there was a lot of people like, damn, like I invested in Emmanuel Quickly. I invested in RJ Barrett. Mitchell Robinson, he went down. And while there is a movement that like the Knicks better center is now starting on Isaiah Hartenstein, there was like we drafted Mitch. Like I invested in Mitchell Robinson. Like there is a clear attachment you get to players when you literally get to see them from minute one in the NBA and you get to grow with them. And I think that is more the reaction that Knicks fans do after every game. Like he is him in some way. Jalen Brunson's him, Emmanuel Quickly, him Barrett. You name it. Like Star J Barrett is one of the bigger things.
That's a good one.
What's funny is the Julius Randle of it all. It's only recently that he started to be King Julius again. He dug himself in deep with the fan base.
Yeah.
But between the two playoff appearances and the thumbs down from a couple years ago and the way he started this year, it was just like any good game he has is just building trade value. And maybe that is what's happening, but the man has been on an absolute tear the last 2 months. And, only recently it's like, oh, we got to get this guy to the All-Star game. Like this is not something that happens a lot for our team. We should appreciate this,
Yeah, that's totally fair. I that maybe as a byproduct of being fans of a good team and winning, you can actually think our guys are good enough to lead to win. So there's something to back that up too.
Well, so the even crazier part is this happened before they were good. Like Frank Ntilikina, Kevin Knox, Dennis Smith Jr. I'll echo the frustrations of John Macri, the main host of our show. The hive culture has just always existed, where it's not just that I need the Knicks to win. I need my favorite player to do well. Sure. I think this has just always happened. I think there's always been like you root for your favorite players on your favorite team.
We have one or two guys have that kind of following. Like the Denny fans are pretty loud and stuff. But it's definitely not. There's not like every guy has his own little pod of people. It doesn't seem like.
Does Jordan Poole have a pod in Washington?
Not from Wizards fans that he seems to have brought with him. I don't think there's many Wizards fans that have like latched onto him, based on his tenure in Washington, let's say.
Okay. I mean, if I could just ask some questions about the Wizards, I don't want to, because they're 6-27 as we're currently recording. I should mention we're recording this before the Sixers game tonight, so anything that happens in the Sixers game, I'm not reacting to. But the Wizards, I mean, because the Pistons were setting the record for the longest losing streak ever, they almost like took away from any attention that the Wizards were getting for being also on pace for 65 plus losses.
Sure.
And like, if you could tell me, I know rebuilds they require patience, but has your patience been tested this year more than any other as you've been following or even just a fan of this team?
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay personally. I think it's definitely, there are a lot of folks that are already checked out, despite advocating strongly for like the last 5 years that we should be rebuilding. People are like, well, there's nothing to watch. And I think it's less about the losing and how they're losing. There are definitely a lot of like listless nights. And me personally, I loved the other night when they got blown out by the Cavaliers, because if you're going to lose, at least lose so bad that your coach has to run plays through your top 10 pick. And the Coulibaly usage has been like a real point of contention for fans this year. He's just sort of underutilized, I think, in our collective opinion. So seeing him get a little more burn, or at least meaningful burn, would be, make this a little easier to swallow. But we knew they were going to be bad, and it's at least nice to be bad on purpose for a change. So I think that kind of makes it a little easier to swallow. If you're Detroit and your goal was to actually be competitive this year and you're this bad, that's got to be pretty crushing in like year 4 of the rebuild or whatever. Year 1 of a team that was built to be bad, being bad, I think it's a little easier to rationalize. Now, 2 more years of this might be pretty tough.
Who's the guy that Wizards fans are upset is playing over Coulibaly?
It's not even so much that people are playing over him. Like, he's getting like 23-ish minutes a game or something like that. I don't have it handy, but plus 20, 25 minutes. It's just, there's a lot of like run down the court and then stand in the corner. And you see these flashes every once in a while of like, okay, give him the ball, clear out, let him ISO, and he'll do like this mid-range pull up. And you're like, oh shit, like, can he do that again? And then he won't touch the ball for like 15 consecutive possessions. So, I think just less about the minutes and who plays over him and more about just like, let's get him actual touches and opportunities to show some stuff off when he's out there.
So obviously we're recording this on the day that Jonathan Kuminga, I guess, leaked to Shams that he's frustrated with how he's used in Golden State. And while, look, I was watching that game last night and I was wondering where Jonathan Kuminga was as they were blowing an 18-point fourth quarter lead, especially when like a team low 19 minutes for Kuminga. That is also like, it's still a bad look. It's a 21-year-old being immature in the moment, which like you hope that goes away with time. But I guess it just, what's your take on this? Like, is it just like player dependent? Like who it meant? Like here in New York, we had Kevin Knox, his first year, given like 35 minutes, do whatever you want. They won 17 games. Yep. And I'd argue it like hurt his development because he was given like the Kevin Durant usage all at once. And then the next year, the Knicks signed like 7 players that played his position, including Julius Randle, Marcus Morris. They drafted RJ, who's really more of a 3, and Knox was playing the 3 mostly. And there was just no clear development plan for him. So you'd argue like bringing him along slowly would have been better. Then there's the Emmanuel Quickleys, who showed like from the beginning, you should be playing him more and more and more. And the Knicks never played him enough, to be honest. So, like, where do you stand on what the balance is of, like, is it actually, like, is there a clear set thing you should always do, or is it really player dependent?
I think it's definitely player dependent and what your team situation is and what your expectations for that player are long term. If you're starting a rebuild and he's your lone sort of long-term piece as a top 10 pick, and you see like potential stardom for them, which I think they do and most fans do, it's tough to just have them relegated to this very low usage role. And one of my colleagues at Bolts Forever, Kevin Broom, wrote a really nice piece about just of guys that have turned into stars, what was their rookie year usage? And I don't remember the percentage off the top of my head, but Coulibaly is falling very far short of that. And I'm not suggesting that it's like roll the ball out LeBron style and let him just cook the whole time, but there's got to be like a better middle ground between, this is the same usage we were giving to guys, drafted in the 30s a couple years ago. So it's just, if you're not going to be good, like we can't find a few more opportunities for them. I think over the course of the season, not that big of a deal like right now, but his usage is trending down over the last 6 or 7 games, which is a little surprising, especially once you're kind of out of any meaningful, postseason aspirations or things like that. You'd think that's when it would trend up. So as long as they clear some guys out at the trade deadline and that frees him up to do a little bit more, I think people will be happy. You've got a coach in Wes Unseld that's realistically coaching for his job, even though he has a year beyond this one. And what that means for him, I think they just want it. Like the front office wants to see development from those young guys, but he's talking about, oh, we won't showcase veterans or promote young guys. Like we're just going to play our best lineups. And it's like, okay, for what? Like, so you can be 7 and 26 as opposed to 6 and 27. What's the end game with a lot of this stuff is going to be interesting.
It's why I started this with more transactional discussions, because I wonder if he's playing them for the case, and then maybe he is just flat out trying to win games, which not exactly succeeding at that. But the fact that you have, I hate to call players assets, but you have guys that you potentially want to move at this deadline, you got to put them on the court so teams can get a good look at them. Now, in the case, like we just had RJ Barrett get traded out, I think we reached a point where the more he played, the more he was diminishing his trade value. But point is, you understood the quagmire of like, I can't just suddenly make him off the bench because that makes his value even like that much worse. Sure. And so if I can ask, just like, who are the untouchables on the Wizards that you consider? And, you know, like, who do you potentially, if it's a two-parter, who do you potentially think will be gone by the February deadline?
I think Coulibaly is probably the lone, like, untouchable.
Really?
Like,
there's only one
untouchable. I think Poole might be untouchable right now just because no one wants to do that, just given what they've probably seen from him so far this year and the contract associated with that. I don't think they're in a big hurry to trade Deni Avdija. They just signed him to a deal. It's team friendly. He's probably outperformed that deal so far. I think Gafford is probably in a similar boat where he's shown some improvement this year. He's on a reasonable contract, but I don't think they would say no to like, a haul for either of those guys. If someone makes you the Godfather offer for either or both, I don't think they're in a position where they can turn it around, like turn that down. You're so early in a rebuild and you're so strapped for picks and things like that they probably have to take anything if someone, blows their lid off when they see, the phone call come in here of like, hey, we'll give you X, Y, and Z picks. Like, sure, I got to take that. Kuzma, I don't think they're actually in a hurry to trade, despite some sort of recent, maybe credible or not reporting to the contrary. But same deal. Like if someone comes in and is like, hey, we will give you 3 first-round picks or something, or whatever the case may be, they're not going to say no. But also, there's no hurry to be like, well, yeah, how about a top 25 protected first-round pick and a bad contract? Like they're not going to do that for sure.
That like Kuzma, I think, because he just signed, right? He just signed. He just
super team-friendly deal. He's under $20 million a year, and that deal descends between now and the end of it. So by the end of that deal, that's going to be, a steal for somebody on a contending team. So I think halfway through that deal is maybe more likely that he gets moved for even more than he'd probably get you right now. But maybe they say, hey, this is as good as he can play. If someone makes us a sweet deal, we've got to take it. So
I think that's the key. The thing I'd zero in on is like, you'd have to really, because like the security of he's under contract, like this isn't an expiring contract. I think that's why Knicks fans circling in on Tyus Jones and whether that's an option is more because he's an expiring contract. The price may not be as high. As far as his matchup is concerned, any Knicks fans that might be afraid that they're going to lose to a team that's 6 and 27, do you want to give us any justifications for that fear, or you want to put our worries at ease?
I feel pretty good about having called how the last game would play out.
You nailed it, by the way.
Yeah. I've seen enough. I've seen that movie before, so I had some experience there. This one, it kind of wouldn't shock me if the Wizards like made a little run at it. They've been kind of punchy the last couple games, with the exception of this Cavaliers game. So maybe there's a bounce back opportunity for them here. I definitely think they'll at least hang for the first half, and then the third quarter seems to be really big for them. If they can keep it close and get it into a fourth, they seem to hang with teams until the end, until they do a few boneheaded things or take a couple bad threes or whatever. But that's really the swing quarter for them a lot of this season. And I don't know. I just feel like they're due for like a win here eventually. It's starting to be that point in the season where maybe you catch a couple teams, and you've got some other teams on the schedule coming up if you're the Knicks that are a little more attention grabbing than the Wizards are. So maybe you overlook a team like this. So could be a schedule loss kind of thing. But I don't know. I would still imagine that the Vegas odds are pretty heavily in the Knicks' favor on this one, I would think.
So it's interesting you mentioned the third quarter. Before this trade was made, that would have scared me. We called it the third quarter of doom because Knicks starting five really always played even. Like throughout the Thibodeau era, it played even, where you just try to either outscore or not be losing by too much. And then the fourth quarter would roll around, or honestly, Emmanuel quickly would get checked into the game.
Yeah, right.
And the Knicks would just blitz teams with their second unit. And I should say, like, Derrick Rose was part of that. Alec Burks for a while was part of that. Obi Toppin, Josh Hart, like Isaiah Hartenstein when he was on the second unit. Like, the Knicks have thrived with a second unit that has been elite for a long time, which is why this new world where our first unit is better is the more fascinating one. So I'll be curious to see in this world where the Knicks they really only have 6 guys at the moment. No disrespect to Deuce or Precious Achua or 7 guys. They have 7 guys. They have Quentin Grimes too. I shouldn't say that, but the point is, like, they're searching for bodies at the moment, and it's funny what a consolidation trade will do. You're like, oh, we have too many guys. Then you make a trade. Oh, we don't have enough guys yet. All of a sudden,
could we interest you in Danilo Gallinari reunion?
You know, it's funny. Is he playing right now? Like that's my ignorance showing up. Like, how is his health at the moment?
He is getting up and down the court. It's just, albeit very slowly. He might be the slowest player in the NBA, but he's still probably a net positive offensively. So if you just needed somebody to come in and be big and stretch the floor a little bit, like the Knicks are actually probably a team that could, like extract a little positive value from that. It's just the Wizards have so many net negatives defensively that they can't cover for him at all. And that's really the challenge.
So I just looked at it. If he wasn't shooting 31% from 3 this year, I'd be enticed.
Sure.
Right now, Josh Hart is the backup 4.
Yeah.
And honestly, in this new world with Anunoby, he's the other backup 4. So we're able to try different lineups that way. Well, actually, as we wrap up, if you want to give me your thoughts on the Knicks and what they've done, and specifically the Anunoby trade and where they are in the standings, what are your thoughts on the Knicks?
I really like Quickly. I've always had a lot of Quickly stock. I wrote a couple of draft pieces about, like, this is a guy the Wizards should be getting much higher than he actually went. So I thought that was a great pick. But they got better for right now. For whatever reason, they weren't valuing Quickly. This seems the way that the rest of us do, or other teams do. Not an RJ Barrett guy. So I just feel like, if you weren't going to use Quickly, and I don't think Barrett's actually that good to warrant that contract longer term, it's probably just the right time to move off of it. And I think OG is like the perfect fit for the rest of that group. So I actually kind of liked it for both teams. Like, there's at least a few pieces of it where you could be like, well, if both sides think you gave up a little bit too much, it's probably a good trade. So I think it was probably a pretty good trade. And I wouldn't be surprised if they went on a little mini run here. And if I were one of these other playoff teams, I wouldn't really want to see them in a first round series.
This month of January. Now, I should say this, going into 2024, like their December was brutal. Yeah. And they played 20 road games in the
first. A lot easier, I saw. Yeah,
man, they're at home more is the simple right. I think they're the 21st easiest schedule in the league, or the most difficult schedule. Strength of schedule, they're 21st in the league, so they have the ability to take advantage of more home games, easier opponents, quote unquote. It's really going to show the lack of like that punch off the bench that comes. Like right now, Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle are playing almost every minute of the game. Yeah, like it's like you get 6 minutes here, you get 6 minutes there, and then we're gonna
special though, right? I mean,
it is. But what's funny is in this era, he's had guys, so it's actually been more the opposite because of their depth. He's been deploying it correctly. I mean, the first year was a little off, where he was still getting used to Quickly being good and Obi being good. The second year, I think, is the year where it's like you did not have to play Obi Top in 12 minutes when Julius Randle is this version of him. Yeah. Last year, I think, is the year where he finally was like, okay, I'm going to let go of the leash a little bit. I have especially once Josh Hart got there, and it was very clear. I got like 9 guys that can play 20 minutes. And this year, even I have 9 guys that can play 20 minutes. And I think that's where the minutes crunch went to. And now, because you have like 7 guys that can play at least 25 minutes, and you don't have a backup point guard, and you really don't have a backup center. Isaiah Hartenstein's minutes are up. Julius Randle's minutes are up. Jalen Brunson's minutes are up. And I don't think it's anything sustainable, which is why I'm really curious what the immediacy and the urgency is for them to make a move. And who knows? Apparently, the Anunoby trade was initially conjured and discussed on December 1st in Toronto when the Knicks were there. So who knows? The Knicks are going to be in town this weekend. Maybe
they're working stuff for a while.
Maybe they'll talk to the higher ups over in Washington, and we could be reacting to a trade in the not too distant future.
We could throw in Mike Muscala to sweeten the deal if that helps.
You know what? That actually would. I gotta be honest with you. A backup center,
he could get
like
some
that.
Yeah.
You know, I wouldn't hate that, to be completely honest. Okay. Thank you so much, Matt, as always, for coming on. We appreciate it. I genuinely do wish you the best of luck with, like, I know how difficult it is to cover a team that is, I mean, look, the first real year that I got into doing this, or at least when Knicks Film School started, was during the 17 and 65 year, which led to RJ Barrett. The first year I got into it was the other 17 win season that led to Kristaps Porzingis. So, like, having experienced years like this, I understand checking out, and I commend you for still keeping at it, you know?
I will be living vicariously through you guys, because I think that's a fun situation to be in. Like, there's organic growth, and you've got, I think, likable guys. Like, how can you not root for Jalen Brunson? Just as like a basketball fan, like, it's just a cool story. So it's been fun to check out.
That, I think, is the coolest part about the Knicks, is like even Julius Randle has to be part of this. The exceeding of expectations that they as a group have been able to do. Like, Julius got cut by the Lakers and then like signed with the Knicks as the consolation prize to not getting Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. And might make his 3rd All-Star team. Jalen Brunson like was Luka's sidekick, and then everybody said he got overpaid to go to the Knicks, and everybody's now like, oh my gosh, he's an all-star. Like,
what a steal. Yeah.
What a steal of a contract that is. Like, that, I think, is the coolest part about what the Knicks have built, where it's like, oh, they're finding things that other people are missing. And, you know, that's the best place, I think, to be in as a franchise. So, Matt, thank you for joining me. Before you get out of here, tell the fine folks where they can find you and all your stuff.
Yeah, thanks. Bleav In Wizards, BLEAV, me and Jahadi White, kind of talking more macro, just how players feel about different things at this point. Doing game by game recap isn't really meaningful when everyone is basically the same. So it's a lot of, hey, if you're in the locker room right now, how would this actually feel to be a part of? Or what do you think the front office is saying about this? And just that sort of macro level stuff. So if you want any more NBA content, give us a hello.
Good stuff. Thank you, Matt.